What do you feel like they're the key habits that you had to install in your life and your business to achieve the success you have right now?
Well, I think part of it is making sure that the action is consistent. Because in the past, it would often be fueled by the current interest and motivation, right? And the thing that I was working on at the time, but that always fades regardless of what it is. So I've had to get a bigger vision. I've had to have more failures that shone a light on areas where I needed to improve and fix. And then I needed to get certain habits in place so that every day I'm doing the stuff I need to do, even if I don't feel like it. And those three together, now I feel like greater success is inevitable because of that. Um, but it's until you get to that point, it's not a foregone conclusion. You're just kind of bouncing around, and maybe you'll get there, maybe not. But yeah, you kind of have to lock those things down.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Jeffro on our call today. I'm super pumped to have him on because we're going to dive into his origin story in a minute, but just also understanding that he is a professional when it comes to websites, getting rid of all these horrible, bad websites in the world is kind of his mantra, and what he wants to do that to really help a lot of people and business owners with. To start us off, Jeffro, tell us a description of what you think that high performance is and what that definition means to you.
High performance is consistent performance regardless of the circumstances. So for an individual, that means even if times are tough and you've got stuff happening to you, that doesn't keep you from moving forward and making progress.
Love that. Well, tell our guests here what you are an expert in and what are the success that you have right now. What do you help people with?
Yeah, I help people with business websites. That's my main focus. And if you have a business website, you don't want it to just look good. You want it to bring you customers. And so that's a big factor in how we approach this. And it has influenced the way we approach doing a business website versus, if you got a personal website or a blog, you can do it however you want. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't need to give an ROI. It's kind of just a fun pet project. But for a business, you want your website to give you an ROI. You want it to serve your sales and marketing needs and bring people in. And so we can dive into that if you want, and kind of how we do that. But let me know.
Yeah, please let us know a little bit about that, and then I'll ask some more origin story questions of it. But how do you help people bridge that? Because anybody and their nephew can build a website now with some of these template stuff.
Yeah.
What do you do that differentiates how you kind of build something? How do you kind of help them really start adding to the level of what they're going to see the output with that they're actually wanting?
Yeah, I think what most people do is they just think, okay, I need a website. And they put it up and list, here's our services, call us. There's not really anything compelling there about why I should hire you over someone else or anything like that. So you need to start, number one, with knowing what the website is for, how you're going to use it, right? Because there's different types of websites. We already mentioned the personal blog one, but in terms of business, are you a startup looking for investors? Because now the way you build that site, it's going to be catered to those investors and what they care about. The messaging, maybe the things that you put on there, the information, the business plan, stuff like that's going to be highlighted. Whereas if it's trying to get new customers, you should be speaking to their needs and wants and pains to make sure they know that you understand what they're going through and that you have a solution that can help them. And maybe you'll include reviews and things to show that, look, we know what we're doing, they can trust us, and you want to hire us too, right? And even if it's just a site for your existing customers, providing resources, maybe you just need a friendly login screen and then an easy to navigate area with courses or documents, whatever it is. So that's step one, is understanding what you're going to use it for. Now, that in mind, most businesses are probably going to have a marketing-based website where the homepage is to kind of act as a first impression to the world. Let people know who you are, who you help, what you can offer, and all of that. But it's really trying to turn those prospects into visitors. And that means you have to get that messaging right. So when we do a project for a company, we start with the messaging. We go through a bunch of questions about who they are, what they offer, who their target customer is, what their customers care about or complain about. And we then take that and write the messaging first before we even look at a design. I think that's another mistake. A lot of people just go find a template, pick the design they like, and then they slap in some words based on where the template happened to put openings for text, which is kind of backwards. So you really need to know what you want to be saying first, and then you can build the design around it. And the design should support that message rather than be a distraction from it. And then, of course, you got to implement the site to load quickly and integrate it with other sales tools that you might have and things like that. But that's kind of the big overview. So let
That's
me know where to
awesome.
go from here.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure that people knew about a little bit about your process and what you're doing because Jeffro is a professional and he knows what he's talking about because he's been doing this for a very long time. And so he's not just one of these template guys that's going to throw something up that's not going to help you. It's his whole focus is to help serve you in so many ways to really make sure that the ROI is there with building something that's going to last you for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go deep, Jeffro. Like help us understand like where did this all started with this success? Like take us back to the origin story. Maybe how old were you? How do you know that you were a little bit different, of a person that wanted to be an entrepreneur that like leaned heavily onto explorers? Like tell us that beginning origin story of what that all looked like.
Sure. Well, I think I've always had the entrepreneurial bug ever since I was little. I had a uh, cookie and lemonade stand as a kid in front of my house. We were on like a main street, and we get those bikers early in the morning. And so we'd sell them lemonade and cookies and stuff. And that's when I got my first lesson about expenses. My parents bought the stuff for me, and then afterwards they're like, "Okay, this is our, pay us back." And I'm like, "Oh man, I thought I made all this money," but like, okay, I guess it makes sense. Fine. But then even in high school, I would, go to the store and bulk candy and buy Cracker Jacks and stuff you couldn't get in the vending machines, sell it to my classmates at lunch or in between periods and stuff, raise enough money to buy a stereo for my car. So always doing stuff like that. And looking to sell things on Amazon over time. I tried all sorts of stuff, but my background has always been computers. I've always been drawn to them, built computers. I went to school for computer science, so I'm a programmer by trade. And as I built websites for people on the side, I was like, at a certain point, okay, let's make this into an actual thing. And so I created Frobro in about 2015, 2016. It was still a side thing at that time. But as I eventually started spending more time on it and having more clients, it was fairly obvious, like I mentioned earlier, business owner doesn't want just a website to look nice. They want it to bring clients. And so I, through that, was able to start building better sites and understanding how to do it right and focus on the messaging and making sure that the design complements that messaging and building in the calls to action and all of that stuff. And then adding in other things like SEO to get people to the website, right? Because that's another problem. Having a website is one piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole thing. And so I kind of have learned that over the years through just experience and studying different courses. And there's so much out there to learn. I feel like I'm always learning, but I never think that I've made it yet. But I'm doing a lot more now that I'm proud of, and I feel like I'm working in the right direction than it was in the past. Because we can talk more about that, but that's kind of the overview
Yeah.
answer.
When it sounds like you're an obsessive learner like I am with trying to figure out stuff and you're just always learning. And there's a lot of people that maybe you and I know, I have this where people are almost proud of the fact that they've never read a book. They don't really
Yeah.
learn stuff. Like eh, bring us to that point of like you're just always thinking about like growth. What does that look like for you? How do you end up taking that into account?
Well, I think learning from other people is simply an accelerator, right? Even if you're illiterate, you can still be successful as long as you're taking action. And I think on the other end of the spectrum, there's people that learn all the time and are doing all these courses, and then there's nobody. If you're taking action and doing the courses, okay, you're going to be going so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know in my early days too, like I would do a ton of courses and read a ton of books. I wouldn't always implement it. Part of it was because like I didn't feel like I'm at that stage yet where it applies. So, but it was cool. Now I know it. So when I get there, I'll know what to do. But I forget it. That might be years later, right? And so the best thing you can do is as you're learning stuff, start taking action and applying it so that it's worth your time and you're getting an ROI on that knowledge that you're consuming.
Yeah. How much do you dedicate a certain budget that you have? Because I know so many people they dedicate budgets toward saying this is how much I allocate. Because Brian Tracy talks about like dedicating 10% of your income toward education and growth. Do you ever do that, or is it just more of like when you find something that you know you need help with and you do it?
It's more of the latter where I know it's which is helpful because it's intentional, right? And I know that there's a greater chance I'm going to actually take this and apply it because I have an active need for that thing. So that books, it's a little easier because, 15, $20, I can manage that, even if it's not an immediate thing, but it's kind of related. But if I'm looking at a $2,000 course or program, I'm going to look at multiple options and figure out, okay, which one actually makes sense? Does it make sense with my current budget to even do that? Do they have payment plans? And I'm going to figure out, okay, is it reasonable that I can go through this and get an ROI to pull the trigger, or do I need to downscale and start with the books first and then ramp up back to that big course or hiring someone for coaching, etc.?
Yeah. What do you feel like they're the key habits that you had to install in your life and your business to achieve the success you have right now?
Well, I think part of it is making sure that the action is consistent. Because in the past, it would often be fueled by the current interest and motivation, right? And the thing that I was working on at the time, but that always fades regardless of what it is. So I've had to get a bigger vision. I've had to have more failures that shone a light on areas where I needed to improve and fix. And then I needed to get certain habits in place so that every day I'm doing the stuff I need to do, even if I don't feel like it. And those three together, now I feel like greater success is inevitable because of that. Um, but it's until you get to that point, it's not a foregone conclusion. You're just kind of bouncing around, and maybe you'll get there, maybe not. But yeah, you kind of have to lock those things down.
What are those things that you've had to help people with to grow? Like some of these things that you've really had to like deal with in your business that you would help with that. Like give us some like key things about that, or some things that you had to learn to help you grow.
Well, I think I had to get honest with myself about certain things, and
Mm-hmm.
even with like managing the finances of running a business, for example, instead of kind of doing it by feel or just like, oh yeah, this kind of loosely managing it, right? But actually getting serious with the bookkeeper, going over reports together, making sure like, oh yeah, I guess I forgot to cancel that subscription, or oh wait, why not? How come we never invoiced this person? And even like, well, I think we're spending too much on our fulfillment here. Maybe there's a way to make this cheaper. Like that's how I went from running just a hobby, essentially a hobby business, to an actual business, which is actually going to grow consistently and where I can eventually have bigger teams and stuff because the finances are under control. So that's probably one of the biggest underpinnings is getting the little things locked down and pay attention to those rather than focusing on the shiny objects up here. Like it's really fun to do this, but that's a
Yeah.
distraction most of the time.
How much does a accountability play into the part of what you do? Because entrepreneurship is not easy because there's a shiny object syndromes. There are a lot of things happening a lot. There's a lot of categories of things that you have to manage and do. Do you play that a lot within different levels of your business with getting a bookkeeper that you have to have this conversation weekly or biweekly or monthly with that gives you that more transparency because you're committed to showing up for them, which they're committed to show up for you, and there's that accountability part.
Yeah. I think that's huge because if it's, I mean, a lot of individuals have discipline to a certain point, right? But the problem is, once you've reached that point, no one else is going to know when you're making excuses, right? Except for you. And so you're your own worst nightmare in that sense. And so that's why the accountability is helpful because now it forces you to do the things you say you want to do, right? Because they're calling you out on it at regular intervals. And so you need to kind of build that into the structure of your day, of your business, of your process, so that you can't just make those excuses, that you're actually set up to make the success inevitable instead of maybe we'll see type thing.
Yeah. When you going back to this vision that you were talking about and like building a belief and understanding, how do you do that? What do you do? What do you journal? Do you get away? Like, help us understand your process of having you like think about doing something that's bigger and leveling up. Like, how do you go through that process of thinking and discovering that?
Yeah, that it's an interesting question to answer because I think there's different layers to it. Um, one aspect is the simple, like task oriented approach, right? Like I'm going to build websites, all right, because I can, right? but I'm going to get tired of that after a while, maybe. And so if you say I want to build more websites so that I can do XYZ, maybe that's save more money for my family. Maybe that's rid the world of terrible websites, right? Or I'm helping other people do it as well. That kind of broadens the perspective a little bit to give a greater reason for doing it, and it can become more enjoyable. And So that's one aspect, but that's still kind of the transactional approach, whereas the task is the thing. But then underneath that, there's the why do I even keep pushing and trying? And for a lot of people, and myself included, my family, my wife, I want to provide more for them so we can do things that are fun and experience the world and travel and take them to Disney World or whatever else. And I don't want to be a bottleneck in or a limitation in what my kids could have been because I didn't make enough money to help pay for better education or something like that. And so there's, and that can come from either just the hope of the future, or it can come from a pain of having failed to do that for so long. Now it's like, you know what, I'm sick of not coming through for them. I need to figure out a way to make this happen. And so when you've got both the task oriented vision with kind of a bigger goal underpinned by this personal driving force, maybe the hope of the future pulling you and the pain from the past pushing you forward, like that's when you start making real progress.
Yeah. That's so important because I think people the let me reframe it. The people I know that have done the best have also deep rooted levels of pain and challenges that they've gone through. And we always admire the people that are like the steady Eddie, in their life. They had the same job, maybe like our grandpa that's worked at the same place for, 40 years and then got like a pension. But entrepreneurs aren't cut that way. Like we want growth, but there's also very like a lot of challenges that come with that. And I know for me, like I remember 9 years ago when I started my agency, I was starting it. I was working with nonprofits, and my wife came to me and said, "Hey, I'm pregnant, okay, and you're the sole breadwinner," because I was working while she was going to school and finishing her degree, and man, we just had a lot going on, and that responsibility hit me like a ton of bricks of like clarity now, of like now I need to get serious and move forward, and sometimes those are defining moments. I know it was for me in everybody's life of like I got to go pro. I got to be serious about that.
Yeah.
Has there been an experience or time like that that you've had to deal with that allowed you to kind of level up and push toward that greatness that allowed you to achieve that?
I mean, I think there's been multiple,
Yeah.
and maybe it's because I'm dense sometimes that it takes multiple things to hit me over the head to do that. But I think so. At a certain point, instead of being a solopreneur, I decided to kind of grow into more of an agency and have teams and things. And so I did at that point invest in outside help, building funnels and bringing in team members and things, and did paid campaigns and stuff. And a lot of that was good, but some of it I made a couple of key mistakes, and so I ended up walking away with a lot of debt and having to shut
Mm.
down some of that stuff, and that was a big problem. And for a while, it's like, well, I'll just, I shrunk everything back. I'll just keep my head down and kind of try to fix it and outrun the debt. But I mean, the interest payments are crazy and things, and so it's really hard to outrun it, especially when you're doing it by yourself, right? And so I was seeing also how it was affecting my family because then I wasn't bringing money. I was like constantly paying off these credit card loans and things, and so that was the most stressful year of my life and impacted my uh, relationship with my wife and things. So I've been working on that ever since then with a new lens and perspective, because it's not something I take for granted
Yeah.
anymore, and it's very intentional about the way I invest in programs if I'm going to do that, and in the way I'm approaching the business, like with the bookkeeper and the team members, the accountability or whatever it is, to make sure that the ship is going in the right direction, it's staying above water, whatever we need to do is intentional and uh, it's not haphazard at all.
I appreciate you being open and allowing our guests to relate a lot with you because I think everybody has had those death defying moments and challenges. Like the same things that you've dealt with, I've dealt with before, with the relationship conflicts or, the challenges of trying to bring things home. But you get through it. And there's like a resolve. And then when you're on the other side of that, you're like, man, that was so hard, but probably actually really healthy for the growth of you personally and the character and the resolve that you had to dig deep in to get to the other side and then build that trust and bond even tighter with your relationships that you have. And so it's like if you're listening to this and you're going through some of those moments, just all of those things will pass and you'll go through it. And then on the other side, you'll have like a deeper conviction, even more so, of like about what you're doing and around how these relationships are built even stronger. So you can get through it. And I appreciate you being open about what you're doing and the cool things you're doing with your company and helping a lot of people in industry. So if anybody needs that help, they need a redesign, they need some help, contact Jeffro. He's going to be your man. Jeffro, any last words here or advice for any of our entrepreneurs before we jump today?
Just bring it all back to your website, whether you're just getting started or if you're at that point now where you've had the click and you're like, okay, I need to get serious. That website is the hub of all your marketing efforts. So you need to do it right, because there's no point paying for ads, driving people to the website if it is bad. You're just wasting money at that point. So spend some time, invest in it, get it right, and that'll go a long way towards helping you in your business success.
So good. Well, thanks so much for being on. Again, people, if you guys need your Jeffro's help, links will be down and below. Connect with him. And thanks again, and we will see you on the next episode of the High Performance Podcast.
Thanks, Nathan.